Welcome back for part 3 of what is CARPS, the computer-aided role-playing system. I'm Murray, the designer and developer of this monstrosity, and we're now looking at items. This video was originally going to be about creatures and items, but my last two videos covered creatures, and doing both in one really is too much. So check out Building a Barbarian and Building a Necromancer if you want to know more about character creation. In CARPS, an item is essentially anything that isn't a creature or a spell. Items are an integral part of the system. A creature without any items is literally naked, and has nothing to help them with the challenges and dangers they face. To demonstrate what can be done with items, we've gone back to our lost peasant, last seen barely escaping some wolves. Our lost peasant is hungry, thirsty, and freezing cold. He's just been bitten by a wolf, but is now barricaded inside this small building. It looks like a worker's hut of some sort, and turns out to have heaps of stuff in it that could help him. After a little while, the wolves stop prowling around outside and wander off. As I explain items in CARPS, he'll take stock of what's in the hut. Items come in many different types, each with different properties and uses. Some properties are common to all, such as size, mass, volume, the material it's primarily made of, and cost. As you can see, the system already comes with over 2,000 different items. General items are the most common and include such things as clothing, containers, food, fuel, furniture, jewellery, medical supplies, and even spell components. Does the type of item actually make a difference though? To answer that question, let's look at how each type of item can be used. For example, if we look at an item of clothing, there's a personal temp field which shows you how much it increases a creature's temperature when worn. So in cold weather you actually need clothing to keep warm, and the more clothing, the warmer you'll be. A secondary property of clothing is that it provides some protection against lightning, heat and cold damage. As you can imagine, being hit by a cone of cold is worse when you're just wearing a loincloth compared to being covered head to toe in cold weather clothing. Some clothing also has a weatherproof percentage, so if it's raining, these items will keep you dry for longer. I guess I should mention that being wet causes actual penalties like slowing your movement, and a -1 penalty to attacks, defense and skill checks. On the upside, it also gives you 10% resistance to acid and heat damage, so it's not all bad. Clothing, and indeed other things, are sometimes created as magic items. It is often important to know which slot something belongs to for the magic to activate, and this can be set with the worn field. So boots will only work in the feet slot, a ring will only work in the finger slot, and so on. Containers. Many items are also containers, such as backpacks, pouches, water skins, sacks, treasure chests, sarcophagi, and more. Any item with mass and volume capacity figures is considered a container. Note that these capacity figures are ultimately just guidelines for the GM. There's no actual limit to how many objects you can make something carry. Containers provide protection to anything stored within. Containers can keep things dry, but perhaps more importantly, if subjected to area effect damage, they can protect their contents. For most damage types, the contents will only take damage once the container is broken. That is, its hit points drop below 0. Even then, the damage is reduced to 80%. This is also compounded with multiple layers, so putting something fragile like a scroll inside a scroll case and then inside a backpack can be a really good idea if you're concerned about being hit by a fireball, for example. I should mention that whether your equipment is at risk from area effect damage is a campaign setting. You can have it never happen, always happen, or only happen on a failed save, and that's the setting I use in my games. Having equipment always take area effect damage is really hardcore, and probably not much fun for anyone, but it is there if you want it. Something else to note, if a container does break, everything it's carrying immediately falls to the ground, which can really screw up an adventurer's day. Medical supplies. Important for treating injuries and preventing infections. Medical supplies include healing packs, healing herbs, and cleansing salve. Heal actions may require these items in order to take the action, or they may give you a bonus on the check. Food. An item is considered food or drink if they have energy or hydration figures above 0. These will vary between the food types depending on their energy density and water content. And yes, I've worked out these figures for everything here so you don't have to. Without food and drink, a creature will get hungry and thirsty and eventually die, so these items are vital. Having said that, there is also a campaign setting to turn this off if it's all a bit tedious for your game. In any case, food can be eaten by targeting it and taking the consume food drink action, but usually just by turning on the automatically consume food drink checkbox under a creature's properties. When this is checked, the creature will automatically eat and drink anything they're carrying to maintain their energy and hydration levels. Fuel. Some items are considered fuel, including wood, coal, charcoal and oil, and putting these into a light source will allow the light source to be turned on and then generate light and possibly heat. Looking at light sources, these items have additional fields to define the light, including brightness, radius, angle, how long the light lasts, heat generated and maximum wind level. The heat generated by a fire can be useful for keeping warm, and how much a creature's personal temp is increased can be adjusted by moving them closer or further away from the heat source. If the light is a container, it will need fuel added to it before it can be lit, and that fuel will be used up over the listed time. If it's not a container, say a torch for example, it will consume itself instead from one item down to 0.1 items and then it will go out. Converting. Items can be told to convert into something else. A simple example of this is a table. Let's say our peasant wants to use the old table here to provide cover or barricade the door. You can select and right click the table, and if it can convert into something else, choose the convert item option, in this case making it an overturned table, which you can then move to block the door. Spell components. Some items are material components for spells. The spells they're used in are listed in the item description. Where a spell specifies a component, it will say whether it is a focus or is consumed during casting and how much is used. If a caster doesn't have the required items, they won't be able to cast a spell, unless they added the frugal metamagic to it, but metamagics are definitely for another video. To make it easier for spellcasters, there is a useful button on the market screen that replenishes all spell components for all their known spells with a single click. Also, keep in mind that a single item can be more than one thing. For example, there are some food items that are also spell components, like carrots and garlic, which are also used to cast spells. And yeah, I did have to add some code to stop people eating their spell components. That turned out to be quite annoying. On that note, carried items can also be locked. If you lock an item, anything it is carrying will be protected from being automatically used. For example, you may have picked up something important that you need to keep until the end of a quest. If you put that into a locked item, it'll prevent the program using it up or consuming it accidentally. Then there's armor. Obviously armor has additional properties, including how encumbering it is and how well it protects the wearer. In CARPS, armor provides damage reduction rather than an AC bonus. How much damage it gets through depends on the type of armor, the type of weapon being used, and the strength and skill of the attacker. How that's actually calculated is pretty complex, so I'm not going into that here. Armour also has other properties. These affect the wearer's defense value, how stealthy they can be, and if a spellcaster, the chance the armour has of interfering with the casting of a spell. Note there's also an armour casting skill you can take to mitigate this, otherwise clerics would be in trouble. If an armour provides full body protection, such as a heavy suit of head to toe plate, this means attacks that attempt to bypass the armour still get half the damage reduction figures applied to them. Helmets, a subtype of armour, tend to impose sight and hearing penalties, but will give the wearer significant protection against headshots and being stunned or knocked unconscious. Finally, there's weapons and missiles. These have many different properties and probably deserve their own video as well, so I won't go into further detail here. Let's get back to our peasant. Having put the table against the door, our peasant looks about at the items hanging from the walls and in the corners. He is freezing, which makes skill checks difficult, so to warm up he takes the fur coat and hat and puts them on. He sees a pile of firewood, a tinderbox, and in the middle of the hut some flat stones covered in ash. Clearly designed to allow for a small campfire, he moves the wood to the campfire, grabs the tinderbox and lights the fire. Moving close, the fire warms him up some more. Still a bit cold, he also puts the padded armour on. Padded armour is made up of many layers of cloth, and it is quite warm in its own right. He's no longer cold. Searching the hut, he is overjoyed to find a satchel with medical supplies. He has some basic skill tending to wounds, 2 ranks in the heal skill, and looks at the wolf bite on his leg. It doesn't look good. and he knows without treatment it could easily get infected. Taking the satchel, he targets himself and makes a heal aid injury check. Since he's got a healing pack, cleansing salve, and the injury happened only a few minutes ago, he can tick all of these checkboxes. Let's say he rolls 13, which is enough to succeed. He immediately gains a hit point, his natural heal rate is boosted by 50% over the next 2 days, and if there'd been an infection, the cleansing salve would have removed it. He decides to sort out his equipment, putting the tinderbox into the satchel over his shoulder, and picks up the old battle axe from the corner and slides that through his belt. Now he's just hungry and thirsty. A hole in the roof has been letting snow in, and there's a pile in the bottom left corner. He starts putting snow into the pot and melting it over the fire, eventually collecting 6 pints of water. He also finds a pack of old rations and adds the contents to the pot. Running the encounter forwards an hour, he now has a warm broth to consume. He's not hungry or thirsty anymore. Feeling much better and relatively safe in the hut, he lays down by the fire and gets some sleep. After 8 hours, he's hungry again and consumes more broth. Now there's not much left, but his energy and hydration figures are looking a lot better. Unfortunately, it's now gotten dark outside, so he'll have to wait until morning before setting off again. Can he make it back to civilization alive? Perhaps we'll find out in the next video. Well, that's it for this demo. I hope you found it enlightening. As mentioned, check out Building a Barbarian and Building a Necromancer for more on character creation. Keep an eye out for the next video, where we'll see how characters actually do things with actions. That's all for now, folks, and may your characters always be awesome.